Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul, and in this RedGamingTech.com video, we're going to be discussing as well as analysing tech news, which as usual, has popped up the past 24 or so hours. Today we have a very interesting AMD rumour to get through, and it concerns the Ryzen 4000 series, but predominantly the Ryzen 5000 series, which is apparently codenamed Warhol. Just to get everyone up to speed, if you missed yesterday's video, there was a rumour circulating from DigiTimes, and in that particular rumour, it stated that AMD were not going to be utilising the 7nm Plus process for Zen 3. Zen 3, of course, for the Ryzen 4000. Instead, Vermeer would be using the 5nm process from TSMC, which I'm sure you'll agree is, well, at best surprising. And of course, in that video I went over the different potentials of, yes, it could be true, and well, no, it can't be true. One of the big issues, honestly, was that if it was true, it would be quite late into the production cycle of the Zen 3 architecture, which would mean that there would basically need to do retapes and then validation of the silicon to see whether, the design is going to be functional, and obviously then they need to test various engineering samples and slowly bring it up. And at that point, there was allegedly Zen 3 silicon in the wild engineering samples. So, while it's not impossible for them to have done it, it would have required an awful lot of work at best. But there is a very interesting rumour which basically says that that isn't true, and we will actually see Zen 3, or an enhanced version of Zen 3, yet again in the Ryzen 5000 series. And once again, just to remind you, these processors are codenamed Warhol. So this information comes to us via, I'm probably going to mispronounce this, so I apologise, but a Twitter user by the name of Meebrew. Probably pronounced that wrong, so let me know how to actually pronounce that in the comments. But anyway, this was spotted on videocards.com, and this information is completely and utterly contrary to the DigiTimes story. So in short, one of these is incorrect. So DigiTimes have had misses in the past, but in general, I will say that their information, particularly when it comes to TSMC, is in general, and I'm stressing that, fairly reliable. They have had misses, but in general, they've been pretty consistent. However, this particular individual has had more misses, although they still have leaked stuff in the past which was accurate, and furthermore, they also have the benefit of an image which has since been scrubbed from their Twitter, but of course, by that point, it was already doing the rounds on the internet anyway. The other thing is, with the DigiTimes rumour, it seems like, well, it's a lot less likely to be true, simply because it's so close to the release of the Ryzen 4000 series that we're even hearing this. Now, to give DigiTimes some credibility for a second, it is worth noting that this is why they are saying that the Ryzen 3000 series is getting a refresh with, let's say, the 3800X that we're seeing, of course, a refresh for. But those CPUs are known as the XT line, and we know those exist because we've seen leaked benchmarks of them, which is obviously always a pretty good sign. And at this point, we're just waiting for the announcement. The launch date is said to be the 7th of July, which marks a year to the day that the 3000 series debuted. But anyway, let's get into Warhol. So this particular CPU is said to be still based on the Zen 3 processor architecture. Furthermore, it's also on 7nm and is utilizing PCIe. Meebrew, once again I apologise if I'm pronouncing that correctly, has also said that N5 doesn't share the same design rules as N7 Plus, and so Zen 3 engineering samples are N7P. Now this does stack to what I was mentioning earlier. It would at the very least require some redesign and a retape and just, revalidation of the silicon. So I don't know how long that would honestly take for AMD to do that. And it's one of the reasons that I am more skeptical of the rumour, as I mentioned yesterday. There was also another tweet that the user plopped up, and you can see the numbers yourself. The first number, so for example, if we look at Matisse, it has number 2 and then /7. So the first number represents the architecture. So for example, with Matisse, that's Zen 2. And then the second number is obviously the production node, so 7nm. So we have Vermeer, which is Zen 3, and once again on 7nm. Then Warhol, which is also Zen 3, and is going to be on 7nm, and then Raphael, which is Zen 4, and is going to be produced on 5nm, which is extremely interesting. Furthermore, Kamachi, who is also very good at discovering leaks, also notes that according to what he understands, Raphael also has the name Nave, or RDNA, attached to it. So it's kind of interesting that these two rumours completely and utterly contradict one another in such, well, a small time window. Generally, there's at least a couple of weeks before we have to choose between which rumour is right. I would personally say to just go in with a massive truckload of salt, because both of these are somewhat contrary to what I've heard, and also somewhat contrary to what we'd kind of expected anyway. Because if this is true, Warhol potentially could even be on the AM4 socket, which is kind of strange because when I was speaking to people last year, the rumour was, or what I heard from a very good source, the same source, by the way, who told me the July 7th information for the release date for the Ryzen 3000 series as well as RDNA, and provided me all of the AM4 information way before the, rumour started. If you're unfamiliar, I was actually the one who leaked the release date of Ryzen 3000. So that very same source told me that the information they had back in the day, I don't want to give timeframes because obviously I want to protect my sources, but for the information that they had, AM4 would be dead in 2020, or at the very least being phased out, with the next platform being AM5, so Zen 3 would be the final architecture. So this makes me wonder, is Warhol on AM4, or is it going to be AM5? Yeah, to add to that, of course, AMD themselves have stated that Ryzen 4000, which once again is Vermeer, will be the final motherboards, will be the final CPUs that the 400 series boards will support. Remember, there was that whole craziness where they stated that you will need a 500 series board or later, but that doesn't necessarily mean that AM4 platform is dead. It just means that they are no longer going to support any motherboards prior to the 500 series. Technically speaking, you can also look at it like that. And as I've mentioned in yesterday's video, but in case you missed it, I'll quickly say again, during a press briefing, basically AMD said that to begin with, when they were originally announcing the AM4 platform, they said it would exist up until 2020, but now they're saying that it doesn't necessarily mean it's dead in 2021, just, they are not, it's kind of going like the I don't know, the last gasps of life. If I had to guess, and it is only a guess, I'd probably say that Vermeer will be the final CPU on the Ryzen, on the AM4 platform, and then Warhol will be on AM5, but we don't know. I was told that AM5 looks like it's entering in 2021, but at this point, there's a lot of conflicting information, and who knows, maybe AMD have opted to go a different path. Switching from AMD, let's move to Intel. Well, actually, technically speaking, another employee has made that very same switch, and this has been confirmed by crn.com. And this particular individual is extremely interesting to me because he was instrumental in a lot of the architecture for the Xbox One and Xbox Series X, at least according to his own profile. And this individual has worked a long time at AMD. And the chap's name is Ali Ibrahim, and he is a former senior fellow at AMD, and he's now working as a vice president within the Intel Architecture, Graphics and Software Group, and is now the director of platform architecture and engineering for discrete GPUs. CRN was told by a spokesperson, "We are thrilled that Ali has joined Intel as a vice president, platform of architecture and engineering, DGPUs, to be an exciting part of Intel's Xe graphics journey." Now, as I just mentioned a second ago, he had been at AMD for quite a long time, around 13 years, actually slightly longer than that, and has been, well, let's just say pretty important to the company. He's not someone who's just worked on the odd thing here or there with management stuff. He's done an awful lot. To reiterate, he's designed a lot of the architecture for the Xbox One and Xbox Series X. Primarily, he focuses on SoCs and platforms, and even has some experience back on Skybridge, which was actually a product which combines both ARM and x86 cores. Now, what we know, of course, about Xe is that it's going to be a series of GPUs. It's going to be several generations it spans, and Intel are extremely serious about it. For those who don't know, maybe you've joined the channel a little bit later on, and obviously I appreciate that if you are a more recent subscriber as well as a long-term subscriber. Intel actually flew a bunch of us out last March to GDC, and there I actually met quite a few people from Intel, and I have to say that the management team there, Intel have had some problems internally, and those are well documented, but I do believe that overall they do want to make some very interesting products. So I think that they will continue to push this. I don't think it's going to be a flash in the pan. I genuinely feel Intel will put out some really amazing products. I just don't think it's going to be this year. In fact, quite interestingly, Intel Graphics on Twitter was responding to some people who were asking about competition in the marketplace, and they said they're working on it. And then I actually commented that I don't think it's going to be this year. I think, however, we're going to see like data center stuff, start being announced, and then obviously we'll go to gaming, which had already been kind of confirmed anyway, and Intel did like it. The thing is, though, Intel will be facing so much competition from Nvidia and AMD, who I've also interviewed several times on the channel in the past. And once again, both of the other two companies as well have an awful lot of passion. But I think that's great for us as end users. I'm personally really excited to see what AMD bring to the table with RDNA 2. I'm hearing some tremendous things about RDNA 2 from lots of independent individuals. So it's not like it's all the same source. Several people have all told me RDNA 2 is really good up and down the product stack, and could be up to 80 compute units with a die over 500 mm², and it looks like it's going to be putting out an awful lot of gaming performance. Furthermore, in the data center, CDNA looking like it's going to be very impressive too. Meanwhile, Nvidia, well, they're just Nvidia, and I don't really think I need to say that Ampere, at least according to all we're hearing, is going to be absolutely phenomenal. And of course, both AMD and Nvidia have roadmaps way ahead of this. AMD have already confirmed that RDNA 3 is in design, and CDNA 2 is also in design. So I don't think this is going to be a walk in the park for Intel. I think they're going to be facing an awful lot of pressure in the GPU arena, but I do think they have the resources to do it. It's more whether they can get everyone kind of working together on the project and whether it all comes together. So we'll just have to wait and see. With all of the rumours, with all of the speculation, with all of the hype, finally, Sony have confirmed that the PlayStation 5 will be revealed at 1 p.m. Pacific time on Thursday, June the 4th. I'll repeat that, 1 p.m. Pacific time, June the 4th. Sony will show the future of gaming on the PlayStation 5. I will be honest, the trailer doesn't really exactly show a whole lot, so if you're hoping to see like a glimpse of the console or maybe some gameplay, well, I've got news for you. At this point, Sony have been really cagey when it comes to any real confirmation at all about the system. naturally there is a ridiculous amount of hype because I think we can all agree it's not just about like Sony versus Microsoft. We kind of just want like an actual overview now of what the next generation is going to be like. Personally, I'm really excited to see what the games are going to be for both, and I'm really interested to see whether Microsoft do reveal Lockhart this year. But as for Sony and the PlayStation 5, you may recall that some of my information has told me that the console itself is extremely innovative. Sony did not want to show off a console which was basically like handcrafted. They didn't want like a cherry pick a sample. Instead, they wanted to produce a system which was, well, basically rolling off the mass production line. Furthermore, they also wanted to show a game which would have a good representation of how it would run on the PS5. They did not want to cherry pick certain snippets of gameplay. They didn't want to take like a vertical slice of a game that really and truly didn't really represent how it would play on the PS5. Furthermore, and the real big one, is that they knew that if they diverted the teams from actually crafting the experiences on the PS5, well, because of the current that's going around, as well as the fact that, of course, it's the next generation of systems, and obviously development cycles are already strained, what with trying to get used to even developing on the hardware. Essentially, people were just concerned, or inner management of Sony were concerned, that they would not literally have enough time to finish the game, because crafting demos takes an awful lot of time. Because obviously, you don't want to show a demo, like 10 minutes of gameplay or whatever, and then be like, hey, that texture looks a bit crappy. It needs to look as good as possible. So obviously that takes time away from the developers actually working on the finished products, which could end up actually delaying the game for launch, which obviously would suck. My sources have also told me that when the PlayStation 5 is shown off, people's doubts and frustration over not actually seeing the console will all melt away, and they know that the system is just going to really excite people. So personally, I'm actually kind of interested to see the actual console itself and what Sony are doing there. But it's kind of like this duality, because Microsoft are really hyping up the game studios, the 15 game studios. And I'm super excited to see what in the hell Microsoft have been working on in the background. And in the final piece of news for today, Sony have told PlayStation 4 games developers that any new game which is submitted for certification must be compatible with the PlayStation 5. This is according to a Eurogamer article, and it's very interesting because according to Eurogamer, internal partner websites which are run by Sony and apparently have been actually witnessed by Eurogamer actually has information for developers, and they must actually check the state of their game to see if it works on PlayStation 5 hardware. But there is like a cutoff. So basically, if you're trying to submit a title which is past the 13th of July, so let's say you submit it the 15th, then it needs to be backwards compatible on the PS4. And also the documentation itself does provide a little bit of information of what compatibility does mean. Again, and I'm reading this verbatim from Eurogamer, a game will be deemed compatible with the PlayStation 5 only if its submission code runs without an issue on Sony's next generation machine and provides the same features on the PS5 as it does the PS4. So, for example, what you can't do with the PS4, with this, is to have a game which runs inferior. It can't have like bugs, it can't have glitches, it can't have modes which don't work. It needs to run identically at the very least between the two. And as we know, development kits are consistently rolling out for the next generation hardware, and apparently this option to test compatibility with the PS5, because obviously not all studios have this, a PS5 development kit, it's now part of the PS4 development kit, so you can basically do testing to figure out whether or not your game will run fine on the PS5. But I know you have a couple of questions. One, what happens if you were to submit a game now? Well, Sony don't penalise you, they won't punish your studio, but they would, quote, strongly recommend it. Which I guess makes sense for multiple reasons. After all, if you sell a game, let's say right now, and the PS5 launches, technically speaking, if it doesn't work on the PS5, your game is essentially dead because you can't even sell it, and that may not be enough time to recuperate the cash. And as for games which are submitted after the 13th, so let's say you submit at end of July, then any future updates for the game, so if you remaster it, if you patch the game for, like, let's say multiplayer, or maybe fix bugs or whatever else, it still must run on PS5 hardware. So it's going to be extremely interesting how all of this comes together, because certain games, like for example Ghost of Tsushima, is going to launch past the 17th. I'm going to be very curious to see what happens with backwards compatibility for the PS5. Obviously, Microsoft have been really pushing that for the Xbox. I covered this quite extensively yesterday for the Xbox and its backwards compatibility mode, and there was some really fantastic stuff there. For example, if you run a game, select titles will be able to double their frame rate. So if they were running at 30 on the Xbox One, you could run them at 60, or if they were at 60, you could hit 120, which is just awesome. Naturally, you will also be able to run the game at higher resolutions and stuff. Furthermore, Microsoft have also detailed stuff like HDRing. That's not a very good term, but whatever, a game. So in short, if the game was offered originally in SDR for the original Xbox, say, you will be able to play the game in HDR, and furthermore, it doesn't actually take away any performance from the GPU, which I think is pretty damn sweet. With all of that said though, hopefully you have enjoyed the video. The normal stuff if you have, like, share, comment and subscribe, and thank you to everyone who has recently subscribed to the channel. We're really close to 70,000 subs at the moment, so naturally if you can share the channel and ask people to subscribe, friends and family, I would greatly appreciate it. With all of that said though, bye, have a great day.